It's not that again.
Excuse me, one here. Director Janice Cater Thompson.
Here.
Director Chris Corsi.
Here.
Director Susan Harvey.
Here.
Director Gerard Judice.
Here.
Director Nasa Hinton. Chair Ariel Kelly.
Here.
Director JB Leap.
Here.
Director Sandra Lowe. Director Jeff Okrepke.
Here.
Director David Rabbit. Director Linda Hopkins. And Director Mark Lasky. Madam Chair, that's everybody.
Great, and we have a quorum, so we will go ahead and jump right in for our public comment on items not on the regular agenda. Are there any members of the public here in person who would like to address the board for a non-agenda item? Please come to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we'll go over to Zoom. Do we have any members of the public on Zoom wishing to make comment? Please use the raise hand feature if you would like to make comment.
Madam Chair, we have a member, it looks like Kyle Falbo.
Go ahead and unmute yourself. Thank
Hi.
you.
Welcome, everyone. So a couple quick things. I have been concerned about the Sonoma County transit support that Sebastopol has been receiving over the last 5 to 6 years.
Are you able to turn up the
looking-
volume here, or can
Yeah.
Mr. Falbo turn up his
Is
volume?
that better at all?
Sorry, we're just having a hard time hearing you. Give us
Okay.
just one moment to figure out audio.
I think it's on your end because I got a hot mic.
Yep, apologies.
It's all good.
Audio out.
Sorry, I'm gonna let you
Yeah,
do
no,
it.
no problem.
Just let me know when you're ready.
We are ready.
We good?
Go ahead. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. So I've been concerned over the last 5, 6 years about the radical reduction in Sonoma County transit bus service, particularly for the city of Sebastopol. We're looking at like a 75% to 90% reduction in Route 26. That is a key connector to the smart transit system. In addition, I think it's somewhere around 40% reduction in service to the Santa Rosa area through the Route 2022 connections there. So part of that concern is that I don't necessarily know that Sebastopol is being well represented on this board. Our key stakeholder who is on this board, Nisa Hinton, has been absent for 4 of the last 5 meetings, and it's not clear that they are adequately representing the city of Sebastopol's interests. I'm curious if there's a mechanism in place for when a board member is frequently absent, say 4 out of the last 5 meetings, in which we can seek from this board to have that member replaced. I know that there's alternates, and that alternate has not also been in attendance in the last 4 out of the 5 meetings as well. And so I'm really just hoping here, and I'm hoping that there's opportunity for me to speak on these individual agenda items, because I would love to see an increase in Sonoma County transit service to the city of Sebastopol. And I really hope that there's representatives that are also advocating for the needs of Sebastopol as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with public comment on Zoom? This is not agenda.
There are no other public comments.
Okay, great. And I just wanted to confirm for our meeting minutes that both Director Hinton and Director Hopkins are present. They were out when you just called roll, but are here now. Okay, and now we will move on to the consent calendar. So we have a number of consent calendar items today, items 4.1 through 4.7. And any directors with comments, questions, or anything on consent before we go to public comment? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to public comment. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to make public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to make comment on the consent calendar? Please use the raise hand feature.
Madam Chair, I see nobody with public comment.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back. So again, this is items 4.1 through 4.7 on consent. There a motion to adopt or approve these items?
So moved.
We have a motion by Director Harvey
Second, Chair.
and a second by Director Giudice, and we can just do a voice vote. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we are on to our regular calendar. So our first item on the regular calendar is 5.1. Dana is going to come up for our transit implementation ad hoc report out. And again, this is just a report out item, no action. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Directors. So this is a report out for the transit implementation ad hoc that met on January 22nd, where we covered three main topics. The first was early results from implementation of the Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service Plan, or MASCOTS. We've included a lot of background slides in this agenda packet, which I'll go through fairly quickly, as I know you're all familiar with the plan and recommendations. And so to start off, this is on. All right. All right. As a reminder, the main goals under MASCOTS were to grow ridership, work as if one agency rather than 6 transit agencies, and to develop a plan that is implementable in the near term. Oh, sorry. Delay here. Sorry, I skipped one and now it's not going back. There we go. All right. The largest changes under MASCOTS were to discontinue Golden Gate Transit Route 101 north of Novato and increase frequency between San Rafael and San Francisco, and to increase frequency and extend span of service on SMART. Through MASCOTS, all right. The roles for each agency were defined, and the major shift was identifying SMART as the main regional service provider between Sonoma and Marin counties. Benefits of the recommended service changes included less duplication, higher frequency, matching service to demand to support ridership growth, and lower fares on most regional transit trips. MASCOTS was funded as a 3-year pilot, which goes through June of 2029. And we've included a schedule here for the evaluation of the pilot program. We're kind of focusing in on where there's planned updates to boards. The next slides will show a snapshot of early results in the first 6 weeks of MASCOTS. And later this year, there'll be an opportunity, if there's interest from boards, to show kind of an update on ridership trends. In spring of 2027, we'll be ready to present an interim pilot evaluation. And then in fall of 2028, we'll have a full evaluation of the pilot. And then boards would take action on any post-pilot service and funding in spring of 2029. So jumping into the early results, under MASCOTS, SMART increased service by 19%. On April 12th. This was met by an impressive 20% increase in ridership, looking at the 6 weeks before MASCOTS implementation and the 6 weeks following. Breaking this down further, weekday service increased by 14% and ridership increased by the same amount. And weekend service increased by 50%, while Saturday ridership was up by 58% and Sunday ridership up by 51%. A trend developing post-mascots implementation is increased transfers between SMART, Golden Gate Ferry, and Golden Gate buses, and Marin Transit. So the increased schedule on SMART and Golden Gate 101 in Marin appears to be promoting more usage of the 101 to travel to and from San Francisco and overall growth in ridership. And it's worth noting that to support these transfer findings, an analysis was completed in the spring of 2026 in anticipation of the pilot implementation. And this analysis predicted that travel times would improve notably under mascots. The analysis measured two rider-centric metrics. How will the transfer experience change for riders at key interagency transfer hubs? And how will overall transit travel times change for riders at select origins and destinations? This analysis showed improved transfer quality between SMART and Golden Gate Transit Route 101 at the San Rafael Transit Center, as well as between SMART and the Golden Gate Larkspur Ferry. So looking at Golden Gate Transit, productivity improved by focusing more trips on shorter routes that better serve the Golden Gate Bridge and connecting the North Bay to San Francisco. Local rides shifted to local operators that can better focus on serving the needs of their customers. So on Golden Gate Transit, the number of trips increased by 22%, and overall ridership dropped by 4% in the 6 weeks following mascots compared to the 6 weeks prior. There was a 12% decrease in service hours on Golden Gate Transit under mascots, but more shorter trips, showing an overall increase in productivity when you look at passengers per trip. So this graph doesn't show ridership increases on Marin Transit or Sonoma County Transit, San Jose City Bus, or Petaluma Transit, but it does show the regional operators. So I'll keep moving through the transit update and ad hoc update and then take questions at the end. The second thing that we discussed was the various complementary transit plans that are underway or on the horizon. These include Sync Sonoma Transit that recently kicked off, Sonoma County Transit's strategic plan, which is underway, Santa Rosa City Buses short-range transit plan, which is also underway, and Petaluma Transit's long-range vision plan that was recently awarded funding. And here's a very high-level tentative timeline for all the plans. There is a lot of overlap, and we are coordinating very closely with our partners to share information and ensure that we are communicating at various milestones where there are opportunities for the plans to inform one another. And then finally, we briefly discussed an item that we plan on bringing to this board in September, recommending a funding plan and extension of an agreement to continue the Redwood Bike Share pilot for another 3 years. And that includes my update. Happy to take any questions.
Oh, I think it works. I received a comment where we now, starting today, there's a special bus that from the Sonoma Plaza to the Smart Station in Petaluma, which I'm very grateful for. I know I've advocated for that for a long time, but the signage has not changed. And so got a couple comments that and it's new. I mean, obviously there's time to do it, but we really want it to be successful. And there's been a couple articles in the paper about it, and I've brought it up at city council meetings, and I'm planning to do a field trip with, I have to pick a good date and actually get people on the bus and get a little publicity about it. But I just wanted to mention that a couple of the writers did write to me saying they were happy, but they'd like to see some more signage and more publicity because we'd really like to make it successful. But thank you for all the efforts to make it happen. Thanks.
Director Giudice.
Thank you, and thank you for that presentation. So in terms of the interim pilot evaluation next spring, can you kind of talk me through that a little bit?
Yeah, so that will look at I believe, the first full year
Right.
of post-implementation. So we'll have a lot more data to look at, and data that's been more fully vetted. And we'll be looking at overall ridership. This snapshot view of what's been going on the first 6 weeks was looking at operator by operator, but we can want to look at a full picture.
But in terms of consistency with all the different participants, are they all going to be looking at the same thing and coming to the same conclusions?
Yeah, so the mascots team will work together on a presentation and bring that to all of the boards for the different transit agencies and as well as the CMAs.
And will they do that in a silo or everyone come together in this room and give it to us and then give it to other agencies as well?
Yeah, so representatives from the different agencies will be up to them to present to their boards, but
Okay.
it will be one presentation with consistent messaging.
Then I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of when this is all over, what does that look like on the other side of all this? Does it lead to mascots 2.0 or what are the next steps? And that's an unfair question. That's why I was kind of looking at James a little bit.
It's a fair question. How's my mic? Is it on? There we go. We're green now. Yeah, no, it's a fair question, right? Because we're embarking on this 3+ year journey together. That's the largest change in transit, in Sonoma County for decades, right? I mean,
Yep.
Since we've actually added an operator, it'd probably be the last time we had a change of this significance. So, what you've seen in some of the initial results is what you're going to see in the final analysis, or not the interim analysis as we advance it. I also think that it's really important to recognize that MASCOT stands for Marin Sonoma Coordinated Transit Service, and service is something that doesn't go away. So there's a commitment to those 9 entities that come together on a regular basis, the 6 transit agencies, us as a funding agency, MTC as a funding agency, and Transportation Authority as a funding agency. They've met monthly at the executive level for a course of over 2 years. Those meetings are going to move to where they'll be bi-monthly or quarterly as needed, but there's a commitment to make sure that mascots is successful for the long haul. Now, during this monitoring phase, it's also going to allow us, do we need to make any adjustments to the original mascot study, or is what is happening right now working for us? I can tell you that when our group gets together and we talk about mascots 2.0, we don't talk about what happens at the end of the 3 years. We're talking about what's happening now. So we see mascots 2.0 as some of those changes that are going to occur as part of those 3 concurrent studies within Sonoma County, and how we provide better service and connections within Sonoma County to the smart train, and to basically make the mascots plan even more successful. The 40X is probably the first example of mascots 2.0 that will be rolling out continuously as we monitor this. So expect to see not just reports out to this board, but also reports out to the Transit Ad Hoc Committee that you're on. Also, you can expect going forward that, one of the challenges that we're going to be grappling with is how do we make this a sustainable funding source? Because right now we have some one-time funds coming from MTC over the course of the next 3 years, and we're going to need to figure out how we fund this thing going forward. If the results are anywhere near the results that we're seeing right now, this is a huge success, and we want to continue it.
Director Harvey.
Yes, we had some temporary bus service to cover the evening area, and that was due to expire. Did it expire? What was the result? What did we do to take care of that issue? Because I know that in the last few months, we got a lot of feedback from folks on that, and I just was not sure exactly what ended up happening. Over there.
That was a rough for who takes the question. I apologize. It is a tough question, and it is some of the collateral damage that happened from mascots. That pilot study has been discontinued. There is no plan to continue it. There was a long leadway for those drivers or for those passengers. They were interviewed on a continuous basis both before and after the Sonoma County Transit study. So Golden Gate stopped that service in April when Mascot started. Sonoma County Transit had a short-term pilot project from April through June 30th, and it ceased to exist on June 30th. If we want to see successes like this on our transit service where we're getting literally hundreds, if not thousands of additional riders to our system, we have to prioritize our investments. And prioritizing our investments for approximately, 6 to 12 riders to operate a bus like that did not make sense to the mascots group. So it was recommended to discontinue the service.
Thank you. It's come up a few times and I didn't know what the final resolve was. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I'll just echo, I know when we were having the ad hoc committee meetings and kind of the lead up over the course of the last few years, talking about those investment trade-offs and knowing that pretty much in every community across Sonoma County and Marin, we were going to see, some pretty severe changes and changes to the status quo, whether for better or for worse in some instances. But obviously, doing these major transit changes, there were going to be some opportunities to pick up thousands of additional riders, but at the cost of reducing service in other areas, whether that's other time of day or other geography. And so I think, as we've moved into this implementation phase and seeing, and hearing from those constituents and then seeing a lot of the shifting ridership, especially as folks are getting on SMART and that increase, the dramatic increase that we saw there, right? It's not without challenge to make those trade-off decisions. And I think, that's what we're here for, as well as to continue to Director Giudice's question, when do we get to see, the next phase of reporting and results and weighing what, if anything, needs to happen, for next steps. But it is really promising to see the improvements that have happened. And just knowing that, right, the transit funding pie isn't growing. Like if it was, we would provide the service to everyone everywhere as far as we could. But the cost to operate and how we do that effectively, and us as like the regional agency looking at all of the different operators, I think that's it's exciting, but it's also a really daunting task. So with that, I know Vice Chair, you had a comment you wanted to make.
Thanks. I appreciate this conversation. I think, we've spent the last 4 months talking about the launch of mascots. What we haven't talked about enough, I don't think, is that while Mascot has launched, it wasn't launched fully formed. We're doing a lot of work around local bus transit. There's a lot of study and adjustment to come around that. And I hear, it's good to hear comments about what's needed and what may be missing right now. And just for folks in the room and folks online who have commented about Sonoma County Transit, SCT is in the room. Emily's back there taking notes. You're being heard, and that's part of mascots is to keep our ears open and keep ourselves flexible enough to adjust. We're not fully formed yet. And Dana, you mentioned that another ridership trend report would come to us if requested later this year. I, for one, would request that.
Yep. Okay. And sorry, Director Hinton.
I just want to speak, especially since we had a speaker that's a common speaker at our Sebastopol City Council members speak earlier. Dana has been working with us in West County and specifically Sebastopol because we also have had bus routes cut off and not funded out to Bodega Bay, and a lot of things that our constituents have been asking for. I know that Supervisor Hopkins, when I've spoke about this, I've assured my folks that have commented on it, that both Linda and I sit on this board, and we understand that cuts have been made due to having to prioritize and sometimes low ridership. But just kind of understanding that process, people ask us frequently why we're not advocating hard enough. And it's a frustrating situation, I think, for all of us when we actually have to go back to that ridership number and dollars and cents and tell people the pie is shrinking. So just to make that comment.
Thank you for that. Director Cameron.
If I could just make one more comment on the late night service, because it did come up extensively. Golden Gate, in their analysis and their interviews that they did, they found that there was the majority of the regular riders that would ride that ride were riders without destinations. So they were just looking for a place to hang out and stay warm. The other component of that I think is very important, where this board has asked for education, is the paratransit component of that connection. The paratransit component of that connection is only required to be maintained when there is regular bus service for that connection. That regular bus service went away when the Golden Gate 101 went away. But the group was very clear that we were not going to take and stop serving the paratransit community that needed to get across the county line that does go later into the evening than the current SMART train. So as far as any sort of paratransit service to go across the county line, that is the same operator and the same service that folks could get both before and after Mascots, and the Mascots team is committed to maintaining that paratransit service.
Great, thank you. Yes, Director Hopkins.
One question that I have is, what do we sort of do in terms of like community meetings or town halls to kind of explain this to constituents and solicit feedback? Because I do feel like, we get the occasional email, we see the sort of statistics, and yet, it's hard to get like a true sense of, what the community sentiment is around different routes, and again, who those users are. I also just think that one of the challenges with transit is that once you sort of reduce the frequency or reduce the routes, like you start to erode the base of folks who see that as a viable option, instead of utilizing their cars. And so it kind of can get into this like death spiral where then fewer and fewer people use it. And so we don't want to see that, right? We recognize the current funding environment, but is there a way, I guess, beyond like a board meeting, which most people don't want to sit through this, right? That we can get out into the community and like talk to folks informally in kind of a town hall format?
I have a few ideas. Let's start with Dana, and maybe I'll tag on.
Yeah, I would point to right now, Sonoma County Transit is working on their strategic plan, as Hen has had a number of community meetings. Their survey's still open, I believe. If something is related to Sonoma County Transit Service, I would definitely direct them there. But if it, Mascots as a whole, we can certainly take those comments that come in, and we do share them with the whole Mascots team, and make sure that those are collected centrally.
Yeah, so in addition to that plan, there's also the work that the city of Santa Rosa is doing, where they had a study session recently at City Council. You can also add a study that Petaluma's doing. You also have the study that we're doing, that there's going to be workshop opportunities and public outreach or public engagement is composed of that. In the more near term, I can tell you the things that I've been involved with, both myself as well as Dana and the other transit operators, is there's an advocacy group that's meeting on a monthly basis. And they're working for a big push now for the week without driving that's scheduled for the first week within October. That's a great opportunity to engage with advocates. And then they go beyond that in inviting, open invites to their meetings. So I've attended a couple of their meetings. I know the other transit operators have as well. But essentially we have 4 different concurrent planning efforts that will provide those opportunities, as well as our work with the advocates as well. If there's something specific that you'd like to see in West County, we'd be happy to work with you to facilitate that.
Maybe something that we, consider bringing to a MAC meeting or something like that at some point. And those can also be like, you don't have to drive all the way out to Valley Ford or Timber Cove or Burnville, but we can also connect virtually. It might be nice just to share some of that information.
Yeah, we would appreciate doing that. And we have great news to share as part of our funding program as well.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Great. Can I take it to public comment on this item really quick before we bring it back? Is that okay? And so we'll start with anybody in the room who wanted to comment on this item. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take it over to Zoom. And it looks like we have one hand raised, maybe more. Go ahead, Mr. Falbo. Try to unmute one more time. Or it could be a legacy
Can you hear
hand.
me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So really appreciate the update from the Transit Implementation Ad Hoc. I really want the board to take a look at system-wide ridership and productivity numbers and examine what recent service changes, again, going back like 5-6 years, have meant for individual communities. So Sebastopol's experienced a drastic reduction in bus service since 2020, both in the amount of service available and the places they can reasonably reach by transit. So while it's encouraging to hear that Mascot is producing positive ridership, productivity trends, I think the appropriate question is productive for whom and at the cost of what access? Sebastopol shouldn't be treated as though today's reduced service is the baseline from which future improvements begin. The baseline needs to include the mobility of our community that has been lost. Right now, there's a real opportunity to address that. Sync Sonoma is beginning, city bus updating, Sonoma County Transit developing this 5-year strategic plan. I'm asking this body make one specific mobility gap part of those planning processes. Useful transit between Sebastopol and Cotati Rohnert Park that includes Sonoma State and connections to SMART while also preserving dependable access to Santa Rosa. Evaluating the trip from the passenger's perspective, total travel time, transfer time, frequency, evening service, weekend service, and the access to major destinations, not simply route level productivity.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Is there anyone else on Zoom with a hand raised?
There are no other public comments.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back. And Director Giudice, you had something to add?
Just back on what Supervisor Hopkins was saying. In terms of communication, I think, James, you're going to be giving a presentation to mayors and council members in October?
I don't have confirmation yet, but I will be requesting.
So in that presentation, hopefully, maybe we can prepare a very tight update of what's going on with mascots, and maybe we can present that to all of the mayors that are there and have them take it back to their councils as well to discuss in their local town halls. And maybe we can also push it out to some of the other organizations, such as some of the local chambers of commerce, et cetera, and encourage them to include that in their information. And if everybody could be saying the same thing at the same time, we might have an opportunity to capture more audience on this. Just a thought.
Okay. And then seeing that, I don't believe we have any other comments on this item, and it's not an action item, so we just need to receive the report. Any final closing comments? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And now we're on to item 5.2 with BC CAPS. So this is our Sonoma County greenhouse gas inventory. So we're going to be receiving a briefing on the updated report of our GHG inventory. And then this is an action item to accept the report and looking at our emission reduction targets. Welcome.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going to wait just a minute, get our presentation up. Great. And is this working?
It should be.
Very good. Okay. Good afternoon. Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is BC Capps, Climate Programs Manager here with Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authorities. Today, I'm excited to present the results of our most recent countywide inventory of greenhouse gas emissions for 2024. To start, we need to return briefly to 2016 and the creation of our first community inventory. This effort analyzed 2010 data and created a historical backcast of 1990 data that we use as a benchmark from which to track the impacts of our local climate protection efforts over the years. Following this initial inventory, updates have been completed every 2 to 3 years following the U.S. Community Protocol for Accounting and Reporting of Greenhouse Gas Emissions. Additionally, the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy was adopted by this board in March 2021 and set a countywide goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2030. For our work locally, we calculate this as an emissions reduction of 80% below 1990 levels, with the remaining 20% taken up through carbon sequestration projects. The most recent inventory update will be used to determine if this goal needs to be reassessed as part of the Sonoma County Mobilization Strategy, which is currently being led by Tanya. We will be bringing you updates on this work later this year for your continued input. So now let's look at some of the actual data and charts from the most recent inventory. This chart shows inventory levels broken out by sector across all of our inventory years. Overall, we are seeing a 22.7% decrease in countywide greenhouse gas emissions compared to our 1990 baseline. While this is noteworthy, it is far from the 80% reduction that we're aiming for 2030. Looking at the right-hand side of the slide, we see the relative magnitude of each sector, with transportation responsible for over 60% of emissions and building energy responsible for over 20%. Our continued focus on these two sectors as the transportation and climate authorities will be imperative to lowering our countywide emissions further in the upcoming years. This final introductory slide shows our 2024 emission levels broken out by jurisdiction on a per capita basis to account for population differences. The horizontal lines across the chart show the national, state, and county averages per person for comparison with local emission levels. As you can see, all of our local jurisdictions in the county are well below the national average, and all but one is below the statewide average. These results are similar to what we've been seeing in past years, with more urbanized areas having a lower greenhouse gas intensity and more rural areas showing higher emissions per person. Now let's take a look at the results sector by sector. Starting with the building energy emissions, we see levels that are over 48% lower than in 1990 and 10% lower than in 2020. As noted on this graph, a large contributor to this was the formation of Sonoma Clean Power and the start of their electric service in 2012. Another large-scale factor is that statewide generation of electricity from natural gas has been driven down by continued increases in utility-scale solar generation and battery storage capacity. Additionally, further installations of residential solar PV systems with integrated battery storage is allowing owners to use daytime solar production into the evening time of use periods, allowing for cheaper daily rates and for lowered emissions. Looking into the future, despite these advances, California's peak energy demand is projected to rise by roughly half again by 2045. This is expected to be driven by increased electricity use for data centers, for electric vehicles, and for building electrification upgrades, among other things. To keep these emissions down, we must ensure that the new power needed for all of these purposes is coming from renewable emissions-free sources, and thus the continued nod to Sonoma Clean Power for their continued efforts. Moving on to transportation, this chart shows that transportation emissions are over 8% higher than in 1990, but have lowered about 3% since 2022. Despite incredible efforts among our staff and countywide, this sector continues to be the most difficult to ratchet down. Since 1990, countywide VMT, or vehicle miles traveled, have risen dramatically, but efficiency efforts have kept emissions from skyrocketing. This can be seen in how internal combustion powered vehicles have continued to become more efficient over the years. Additionally, continued increases in electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids have allowed for increased VMT, but lowered greenhouse gas emissions by moving away from gasoline and diesel as a fuel and towards electricity. And this trend can be further seen in the next slide. Starting with this year's inventory, we've been able to extract electricity demand from electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids for a specific analysis. These values were traditionally lumped into building energy emissions, but we are now able to view them separately for analysis. As you can see, electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid use has increased exponentially since 2010, and despite recent events, we hope this trend will continue far into the future. Currently, just over 2% of electric usage countywide is attributable to electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids. This increase in EV use has allowed for lower transportation emissions, even while with increasing VMT over the years, and we expect this trend to continue into the future. Now let's take a look at water and wastewater. Water-related emissions are over 69% lower than in 1990, with a slight decrease from 2022 as well. As noted on this slide, a major contributor to this long-term trend is Sonoma Water's Carbon-Free Water Initiative, which resulted in dramatic reductions in emissions from pumping and distribution of water throughout the country or around the county. Additionally, water use efficiency programs continue to lower overall water demand, further enhancing these emissions reductions. Looking toward the future, energy-related improvements are still available at the wastewater treatment plants located throughout Sonoma County, and we are aware of several local jurisdictions that are working on this effort to continue to ratchet down our water-related emissions. Moving next to solid waste, emissions are over 53% lower than in 1990, but have risen slightly since 2022. A major area of focus here is on increasing the diversion of organic material from the waste stream to lower methane emissions from landfills. California set statewide goals for local jurisdictions via SB 1383, but these efforts at the state level to meet these targets have been lower than expected and are not expected to meet the goals. On the positive note, though, here locally, Zero Waste Sonoma is leading these efforts countywide and appears to be on target to meet these goals well ahead of the slower progress that is being seen at the state level. So I wanted to give a call out there to Zero Waste Sonoma and their incredible efforts to continue this trend. Let's move on to our final sector, that is agriculture. Emissions from the agriculture sector are nearly 40% lower than 1990. Reduced acreage for crop production and reduced livestock counts have led to lowered emissions across the sector. Given the critical role for agriculture to the local community, though, this comes as mixed news. Responding to these recent declines, the County of Sonoma Board of Supervisors is working to support the local agricultural industry, formally declaring agriculture and working lands as critical infrastructure that is essential to the county's economy, environment, and food security. We're hopeful that this effort can both reinvigorate the local agricultural community and allow for lowered carbon emissions through sustainable land management and crop management practices. Ideally, we would like to see more agriculture, but of course, more efficient agriculture to continue to bring those GHGs down. I wanted to leave you with a snapshot of our online greenhouse gas dashboard, which is available for members of the public to explore this data. This dashboard is online right now with 2022 data, and I'm currently working with our data analyst on staff to upload the latest results for additional viewing. We are also investigating the use of ICLEI's ClearPath software tool and migrating some or all of our data into ClearPath for some additional functions. In conclusion, to state again, total green countywide emissions are 22.7% lower than in 1990, and all sectors show dramatic decreases from 1990, except for the transportation sector. Realistically, though, even with these sustained emission reductions, prospects for reaching countywide carbon neutrality by 2030 are increasingly improbable. This goal may need to be reassessed through our current update to the Sonoma County Climate Mobilization Strategy, and we'll be back to this at a future meeting to get your input and direction on this issue. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions from the chair or members of the board regarding these results.
Thank you. Directors, any questions on this? Director Buttigieg.
Just a curiosity. So when you're calculating the emissions by jurisdiction, things are looking a little rosy in my neck of the woods, but I'm curious. SSU and Great Rancheria, where are they captured? Is that going into Roanoke Park's numbers or that's going into unincorporated?
SSU is definitely going into Roanoke Park.
Okay. And what about Creighton?
I will need a double check on Creighton. I believe that would also be going into Roanoke Park, but I can double check on that.
In that case, I'm happy.
Director Leap.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You came out with a statistic that went by me so fast that I could barely catch it. And it was 50% of something by when of electrical usage. You reckon it was either that transportation usage would go up to 50%?
Yes, at a statewide level for statewide forecasts around building energy, that the statewide increase, let me get the stat that I read exactly. Electricity demand is projected to rise by roughly half by 2045 statewide. And that is primarily driven by data centers.
Right.
But I also wanted to acknowledge that a lot of the work we do and propose for electric vehicles and building electrification will also, it's a double-edged sword, will also increase those stats.
And then another question I had was, I am curious, since we haven't talked about it in a long time, where the additional taxes on EVs that are being lost as people switch to EVs, the road taxes and such, what's the status on that whole idea?
So that is a topic that I'm not familiar with and cannot speak intelligently on today.
Because we're losing out on that one, obviously. And then the last one is, you mentioned water-related emissions because of SCP's efforts and solid waste emissions. How do you reduce solid waste emissions? Is it by changing let's see, I guess by sequestering the carbon of the gases released, or what?
Most of the emissions released in the solid waste sector are due to the anaerobic decomposition of organic materials that have been put into landfills. The easiest way to take care of that, never bury them into landfills, separate them out beforehand, get them composted, get them back into the ground.
Okay, so this was separate from water, solid water waste.
Correct. So for waste within the water sector, for wastewater, both liquid and solid wastewater, those go to the wastewater treatment plants. And at those locations, because those are centralized locations where that processing is done, there's quite a bit of work that can be done on energy efficiency, on recapturing the fugitive gases from those processes and recapturing them in a way. And there's kind of a whole body of work, body of effort around specific to wastewater treatment plants, specifically to ratchet those numbers down.
I'm about to get a presentation from our, whatever the department is, the water department, tomorrow on our new pyrolysis system coming out, which is right down that alley. It's going to be something else in winter.
Very good, very good. I'll be very interested to hear about that.
Thank you.
Vice Chair?
Thanks, BC. I'm wondering if you have data that would show the increase in VMT compared to the increase in population.
At my fingertips at this instant, no, but those I think are very readable numbers that we could get to you before the end of the day.
Okay.
Okay. I'll work on that once I'm done.
I'm glad you have something to do. Thank you.
Anyone else with a comment before go ahead, Director Hopkins.
Just a question. It looks like the off-road vehicle emissions have been sort of steadily climbing and we really haven't seen a leveling or a decline. Any commentary on why that may be?
The calculations for off-road vehicles are done almost exclusively, or are done exclusively using California Air Resources Board's MFAC database. And it's more of there are no local inputs that I collect that go into that. So it's really it's dependent upon what's presented as part of that MFAC database. And I could take a look at in more analysis, kind of what are the subsectors within that, but it's more a matter of kind of have less visibility over kind of the stats that are going into that and the reasons why those numbers are steady.
Yeah, I'm just really curious about that. And I know that, we have programs both through the Northern Sonoma County Air Pollution Control District and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, farmer being implemented to sort of try to, bring more efficient engines to off-road equipment and vehicles. And I'd just be curious why it doesn't seem to be moving the needle much. And then my other question is, when we're looking at that sort of emissions totals by jurisdiction per capita, like, are the primary drivers there in terms of variables really like VMT commute lengths? To what, building size, like what are kind of the main determinants that go into that number?
I think well, I don't want to speak out of turn and kind of like try to attribute numbers to any I think that let me phrase it this way, as part of the full report that is linked as part of the packet, there are detailed 2-page breakdowns for each and every jurisdiction in the county. Those breakdowns allow for a much granular look at, specific to each jurisdiction, kind of what are the drivers for that local community. And I think that's off the top of my head, I don't have anything that I could share right now, but I do think I think the information is kind of in the report on those pages, and that would be worth a deeper review on my end. So
I will check that out, because I was kind of curious if it was really trying to get into like personal habits, or is it sort of looking at the overall emissions of a community and then just dividing it by the number of people, right? Which is sort of different ways of looking at the problem. So
each of the sectors has a specific way that it's calculated, and and then they're aggregated up, all 5 of the sectors, but we kind of do it slightly differently in each of the sectors.
Okay, I will check that out on those 2 pages. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I think with that, if folks haven't had an opportunity to look at the jurisdiction by jurisdiction analysis that's linked in the packet, highly recommend sending it to your colleagues and city staff. I know staff is also receiving it, but feel like they'll pay extra attention if it's coming from us. I say that facetiously. So please be sure to share this information. I think the only way we can actually move the needle is to make sure that everybody in our communities is aware of the information that we're measuring and capturing here, and then to figure out how do we set achievable goals to continue to move in the right direction. Okay, anybody else before we go to public comment? Okay, we'll go to public comment in the room first. If there's anyone who'd like to make comment on this item, please approach the podium. Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and head over to Zoom. And we have one hand raised thus far. Kyle, go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right.
Go ahead.
So one finding really stands out to me, and that's that transportation continues to be the sector where we're struggling to achieve the same kind of emission standards that we're seeing elsewhere. And I think that has to be considered alongside what has happened to transit service in communities like Sebastopol. Since 2020, Sebastopol experienced a dramatic reduction in bus service. Residents have lost both frequency and practical access to destinations that used to be reachable by transit. We can't ask people to reduce vehicle miles traveled while simultaneously reducing the transportation alternatives that are available to them. If the county's climate strategy depends on mode shift, then restoring useful transit service has to be part of that strategy, not as just some kind of ancillary benefit, but as a core emissions reduction tool. I'm encouraging this body to measure transit success not only by ridership, but by access. How many jobs, schools, medical services, transit connections, and community destinations can a resident reach within a reasonable amount of time without a car? For Sebastopol, that means dependable access to Santa Rosa, but it also means a realistic connection south to Cotati, Sonoma State, Roanoke Park, and Smart. I also want to emphasize that today's reduced levels of service should not become the baseline for which future climate planning begins. The baseline needs to recognize the mobility Sebastopol has lost since 2020.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with their hand raised on Zoom?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, great. So we'll bring this back. So this is an action item. That said, is there any other comments or questions before we move forward? So the action is to that we've received the report. Is that?
Yes, in general, I think we just asked for yes, acknowledgement you've received the report before we post the final numbers online.
Okay. And sorry, did you have a timeline for the update of when the 2024 data will be available on that portal? Ballpark?
Hours, minutes, days.
Great, okay. So if we send this to our colleagues and they all rush to go review it, it will be there by the time they take that action.
We are working on it imminently.
Wonderful. Thank you. No pressure. Okay, is there a motion to receive the report?
So moved.
We have a motion by Director Giudice, second by Director Harvey. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to item 5.3, which is the Wildfire and Climate Resilient Coordination Report from Tanya. Some of you may have been, are very familiar with this item, and some of you may be hearing it for the first time. So great to have this update today.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Directors. And yes, I am here to give you a brief overview of a project that the County of Sonoma has been leading over the last couple of years. And so I'll give you a brief overview of the project and then the recommendations that were shared with the Board of Supervisors on June 2nd and the next steps that the board directed at that meeting, and then talk a bit about what that means for SCTCA. All right, it changed. Oh, there we go. All right. So in terms of some background as a problem statement, we have made a great deal of progress in addressing wildfire risks since the 2017 fires and subsequent fires. But more work is needed to make sure that we are as prepared as we can be for future wildfires. And so to support a wildfire resilient county, there's a need to continue improving alignment and integration of the existing wildfire resilience efforts that are taking place countywide. There are many, many great efforts underway. And also to figure out how to integrate those wildfire resilience efforts into a more holistic climate resilience framework that would help align related efforts. So work that's done, for example, to address the impacts of heat or drought could also be work that supports wildfire resilience and mitigation. And so having a way of looking at those climate risks from a broader and more integrated perspective is an important thing to do. All right. So the County of Sonoma launched the Wildfire Resilience Coordination Project in 2025 and hired a consulting group, ERG Consultants, to conduct an exploration of organizing frameworks to meet the project's objectives. And the two objectives that the project was chartered to work on, first, to create a framework for improved coordination and collaboration within the county family of departments and agencies. Many different departments in the county are involved in wildfire and other climate resilience efforts. And that would also lead to improved coordination with external agencies and groups that are working on wildfire in the county. And then second objective is to develop and propose a long-term framework for institutionalizing these efforts and how a proposed structure can best meet the needs of wildfire resilience in Sonoma County. And although you don't see the other climate risks mentioned here, flooding, drought, extreme heat, et cetera, that was one of the themes that came up during the project itself as the consultants met with a variety of different stakeholders and groups and community members. The issue of how do we address broader climate risks came up several times, and that really influenced the final recommendations that the consultants put forward. So in terms of the project structure, just briefly, it consisted of 4 technical advisory committees. And I want to highlight the 4th one, which is the Organizational Structure and Funding Technical Advisory Committee. And SCTCA was a co-lead of that committee, really in recognition of our role in countywide climate resilience and collaboration, and the fact that we are designated as the state of California's first climate resilience district. So it really made sense to have us involved in that TAC and provide our experience and expertise to that part of the project. There was also an internal county team composed of department heads, the resilience coordination team, and that group really provided overall guidance to the project, discussed strategy and those types of issues. And then the project core team was the team that led the project. And then the consultants, in addition to working with these technical advisory committees, conducted numerous focus groups, literature review, interviews, capabilities and capacity surveys. So quite a bit of data gathering and interview and outreach took place during the project. So in terms of the consultant recommendations, the consultants identified some common themes from their research meetings and interviews, and those included the fact that coordination is fragmented across the county, data is dispersed, you can't go to any one location to get all the information that you'd like to find about wildfire resilience. Funding is not strategically aligned, meaning we don't have an overall plan and kind of alignment of the groups that are working on the projects. Implementation capacity is limited. And then the consultants, as I mentioned, also receive feedback that there's a need for more coordination and collaboration in the other areas of climate risks. And so based on these themes, the consultants identified the core functions that you see here on the screen that would be important to include in the organizational framework that they were developing. And probably nothing here is too surprising to you. The need for centralized coordination, making sure there's consistent community messaging around these efforts. Sustainable funding was probably one of the key things that came up over and over again in the discussions. Providing technical assistance to groups that don't have the resources. They have the kind of on the ground experience, but don't have the, say, expertise to go after grant funding for their projects. Workforce development is a great opportunity that can be pursued. And then, as I mentioned, having a better place to put data in one place, a data portal and analytics that all of the different groups could tap into and rely on. So then the final recommendations from the consultants, which are documented in the report that was attached to this agenda item, included these different circles that you hear on this, see here on this diagram. So the first recommendation is to align county departments and agencies to better coordinate internal to the county, both on wildfire resilience as well as climate. The second recommendation was to form a wildfire resilience working group that would be supported by a memorandum of understanding between the groups that are participating in this wildfire working group. And this group would include representation from county departments and agencies, Fire Safe Sonoma, Gold Ridge Resource Conservation District, Sonoma Resource Conservation District, and CAL FIRE would be seen as kind of the core members in the consultant's proposal. The third recommendation was to create, in this big green circle here, a countywide climate resilience collaborative that would be managed by SCTCA, again, recognizing the role that we're already playing in the county. And this would leverage our designation as a climate resilience district to form this collaborative. And this collaborative would coordinate efforts across the county, cities, and partner organizations, and address multiple hazards, including wildfire resilience. But recognizing that we as an organization don't have that wildfire expertise ourselves. And so that was why it was important to have the separate wildfire working group that's connected into the broader collaborative. Next would be to form a climate resilience technical advisory committee. There were many different individuals and groups who gave input throughout this process, some great nonprofit organizations, individuals with expertise, and this TAC would be a way to bring all those folks together to share their expertise and to look at climate risks across the whole spectrum. And then lastly, the consultants recommended or recognized that this would need to be a phased implementation. So to implement these recommendations as we have the capacity and funding available to do so. Then just a brief look at the roles and responsibilities, again, from the consultants report. And I won't go through all of these in detail, but just highlight a couple in each of the categories. So for the county, the consultants felt it would be important for the county to define its role, where it was best equipped and to lead efforts or to be involved in efforts versus where other groups would be in a better position, what resources the county had that it could provide to the effort. So an example of that would be a centralized data hub. The county has an excellent GIS team and a number of resources there that could be used for this data portal, which is that last bullet, to develop and release a wildfire resilience data hub. And then for the wildfire working group, some of the key areas there would be to prioritize areas of focus. So of all of the efforts that need to be undertaken to become more wildfire resilience, what are those key areas that we need to focus on in the near term? And then support coordination across the different members in that working group. And then lastly, for SCTCA, that we would provide coordination with the county, the cities, other organizations, and also that this effort could support our mobilization strategy update that we're in the process of undertaking. Also wanted to mention that the consultants identified estimated costs for each part of their recommendation. And for SCTCA, the cost estimate was really for a full-time FTE to manage the effort in the range of $200,000 to $210,000 a year. And so that was what they identified for SCTCA. And they also included a list of potential funding mechanisms that could support implementation of their recommendations, but they weren't able to identify a sustainable funding source that would allow these recommendations to be fully implemented in the near term. So lastly, in terms of next steps, I mentioned at the June 2nd Board of Supervisors meeting, the recommendations were presented to the board. There was discussion and public comment on those recommendations. And as a result of that discussion, the board directed county staff to proceed with a modified set of ERG recommendations, which included removing the role of the county executive office staff in leading new convenings. I think recognizing that if there were to be a convening around climate resilience countywide, that SCTCA would be in the best position to do that. To negotiate with Fire Safe Sonoma for county wildfire preparedness, coordination, and project management, to negotiate with SCTCA to enhance our role in climate resiliency coordination outside of wildfire, including a discussion of how the county could best be represented in that effort, and then to bring those draft agreements back to the board in the fall of 2026. And so for SCTCA, our next step specifically is we are developing a draft scope of work and budget to discuss with county staff. And one of the interests of the Board of Supervisors was to have both Fire Safe Sonoma and SCTCA come back with proposals that would produce some tangible outcomes and results in this area. And so in thinking about that, one of the project scopes that we're considering is to build a more robust and comprehensive list of climate resilience projects for Sonoma County. We have many resilience, adaptation, vulnerability studies and plans, but I can't point you to one place where you could see a full, complete list of all of those projects that have been recommended. And even in many cases, the projects are more concepts. They're not really spec'd out to the point where you could easily go out and seek grant funding for those projects. So we're looking at ways that we could leverage those existing efforts and plans. And that would include things like the North Coast Resource Partnerships Regional Climate Resilience Plan that's under development now, MTC's Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus Resilience Project List, Sonoma Water's Climate Adaptation Plan, the County of Sonoma's Climate Resilient Land Strategy, and then many other plans that are local and regional. And we also see this as being a way to complement the update to our mobilization strategy that's currently in progress and could serve as a guiding document for SCTCA to use in facilitating better coordination and collaboration on climate resilience. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. Happy to answer any questions or hear any feedback that you all might have in terms of next steps for the climate resilience work. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Go ahead, Director Harvey. I'll give you next.
Tanya, I don't know if it will help or not, but I was on a phone call with the North Bay Division of League of California Cities the other day, and the city of Napa just adopted their first Napa Community Wildfire Protection Plan. And that might be something that you might want to take a look at, but it's their first and it has been adopted.
Director Lee.
So the word resiliency has so many different areas, places, and things that it applies to. Are you familiar with the Windsor Kaiser Park Resiliency Center activity going on right now?
I've heard of it. I don't know a lot about it, but I have.
I'm the liaison between the Parks and Recs, who's running that, and the town council. And it's a very interesting project, which right at the moment is in the first phase of attracting grants or other funding in order to simply do the planning to, in a year or two, go for the large grants. So I'd like to get that knowledge to you so that you can see it happening, because it's a pretty exciting project, which is for things like heat, resiliency, emergencies, fire, evacuation, all sorts of stuff in those regards.
Thank you. I'd love to learn more about it.
Okay.
Anyone else with comments on this item? Go ahead, Director Okrepke.
I just want to compliment your work on this. Unfortunately, I've had the opportunity to travel to a lot of fire affected areas. It's one of those things that people look at Santa Rosa. There's been plenty of statistics we don't have to go into, but when they look at Santa Rosa and Sonoma County and the resilience and the rebuild, we far outpace anybody else that's been affected by fires. I joke, I'll preface this by saying when you go through wildfires, like a lot of us have, that dark humor becomes a weight-bearing structure. And so I joke with people that it's one of those things we get leveled with a title of like the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl, which is like, thanks, but also like I wish that wasn't the case. I wish we never had to go through it, but to everybody here and everybody that you're working with, I can say without a doubt, the collaboration and the forethought that goes into this is something that is not commonplace throughout the rest of the state and throughout the rest of the country. There's a lot of, whether it be political or deep-seated distrust of government in some places, that is not normal. And I mean that in the best of ways, that what we're doing is not normal. So thank you for your work. And I'm excited to see what becomes of this going forward.
Director Lasky.
Yeah, Tanya, thank you for that presentation. And sometimes we're put into situations where it'd be at the right place at the right time. And since I'm filling in today and I saw one of your collaborators was CAL FIRE and wildfire risk mitigation was part of your presentation. My daughter's an environmental scientist for CAL FIRE, so I could probably connect you with many people beyond that. So get your name and we'll collaborate with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think to Director Okrepke's point, you know, a lot of the necessity of this coalition coming together, you know, it came out of some of the worst of times for Sonoma County, but I also think it really speaks to the collaborative intent and kind of the opportunities to move forward. I also think that SCTCA's role in what you're proposing, you know, is kind of off the heels of what we do so well on the transportation side of the house, with all the jurisdictions submitting their projects and us having this robust structure that is, you know, it exists because the funding is there, and it exists because we have to prioritize which projects in our community we want to fund. But I think in really being first to measure and identify what are, you know, the presentation we just received from BC about the GHG inventory and really shining a light on what each of our jurisdictions is emitting, but then also what we have on the climate mobilization strategy side. And for some of our local jurisdictions who also have a climate mobilization strategy of some sort, you know, identifying what are the projects that are going to help move the needle in reducing the GHG emissions or other types of climate action or adaptation or other, you know, priority projects, because we know there's a need, whether it's, you know, reducing access to water. And so we're going to need to be a lot more efficient about where our communities get their drinking water from because of changes happening upstream, or maybe it's something completely different if it's a flooding issue and adaptation around that. And so I think that the RCPA is really uniquely positioned in the region to have that overall look at what all of the jurisdictions are doing, both incorporated areas and unincorporated areas, but then also how do we take these plans and operationalize them so that we can actually have projects that can be funded and implemented. And so I think with where the rubber meets the road has been really successful on the transportation side of the house. And I think we have the ability to use this opportunity and try to do the same for climate programs and projects. So I'm excited to see where that may take us and really appreciative to our colleagues on the Board of Supervisors in the County of Sonoma for identifying this as a potential opportunity for some of those one-time funds, and to see how this agency can kind of step in and take it to the next level going forward. So I'm excited about that. Director Harvey.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to what Jeff said. Having served now for a few years on city council and had the pleasure of working on many of the different subject areas that we have within the county, we really do have a very, very special area. We have collaboration like no other county, be it from water, garbage, transportation. I mean, we really put our heads together as the county and the cities to make sure that this is the best place for all of our communities. So if it can be done, it can be done here. And it is just wonderful how the people in Sonoma County work together to make these things happen.
Thank you. I don't believe we've yet gone to public comment on this item, so sorry, they all get confusing. We'll go ahead and start with anyone in the room who wants to approach the podium to make public comment. Please feel free to do so. And seeing no one rushing the podium, we will go over to Zoom, and it looks like we have one hand raised. I have a guess. I know what he's going to say, but let's see. Mr. Falvo, take it away. We can't hear you. Are you speaking?
How about now? Is that
Yes.
better? Perfect. I love that you want to guess, and it's my hope in the future that you don't have to guess because we actually get service restored. I love this update. As SCTCA considers its role in countywide climate resilience, I want to make sure transportation access for people who do not drive is part of that conversation. Sebastopol has seen a major reduction in bus service since 2020. That's an everyday mobility problem, but it's also a resilience problem. During wildfire events, power outages, extreme heat, road closures, other disruptions, people who do not have access to a private vehicle still need a way to reach services, cooling centers, shelters, medical care, family, and transportation hubs. A more connected transit network between Sebastopol, Santa Rosa, Cotati, Rohnert Park, Sonoma State, and SMART would improve daily mobility, but it would also give residents more options when normal travel patterns are disrupted. I encourage SCTCA to treat transit connectivity as part of resilience infrastructure and to include non-driving residents explicitly in countywide resilience planning. Resilience should not assume that everyone has a car.
Thank you for that. Anyone else on Zoom with a hand raised?
There are no other
Okay.
hands raised.
Any other comments or feedback for Tanya on this item? So we may see something come back next month or the month after?
September.
Okay, great. Oh, sorry, Lisa, I did not see you.
It's for after this item, so I was just waiting. Thank you, Tanya. I just wanted to apologize to the board. I do have another commitment to the Sonoma County Fair this afternoon, and I apologize for having to leave early, but I've got to scoot over there.
No
Thank you.
worries. We all wear many hats, and they even have a day at the fair for all those hats, I hear. Okay, so with that, we're moving on to our next item, item 5.4. So this is the Safe Routes to School program update for the 25-26 school year. And we have Dana back. So this is an informational briefing, report only regarding our program with the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition. Thanks.
Thank you. So this is an annual update on the Safe Routes to School program. This summer, we transitioned the administration of this grant and the contract from my work plan to Margot Ocañez's. She, as it overlaps with the work that she's been doing on Safe Routes to School planning and infrastructure implementation. She wasn't able to be here today, so I'm just filling in. And just a reminder, SCTCA receives federal funding for the countywide Safe Routes to School program, and we're responsible for implementing the program. The funding is programmed through MTC through the One Bay Area Grant Program. And the Sonoma County Bicycle Coalition has been running the program for many years. And the current contract with them goes through the end of the 2026-2027 school year. So the Bicycle Coalition's been involved for many years and it serves hundreds of schools and students throughout the county through its education and encouragement program, which has been a increasingly popular program requested by more and more schools each year. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Christina Panza, who is the program director for the Safe Routes to School program.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me when I stand up here? Okay, great. And does this advance the slide? Great. So as I believe most of you are aware, the goal of the County Safe Routes to School program is to facilitate more students and families utilizing active and alternative transportation to and from school, also to teach them to be safe while doing so, and to identify and eliminate barriers to active transportation, and also to connect and raise awareness in our community about the benefits of safe routes to school to their health and the environment and more. By the way, the picture on the left and others in this presentation are by student artists who won our art contest last February. So the benefits of doing a Safe Routes programming all of the E's are really vast. I've shared this slide before with this committee, but I'm sharing it again in case there are new members. It's worth a closer look on your own time because Safe Routes programs improve traffic, crime, they lead to better academic performance, cost savings, and so much more when they're robust and when all the partnerships that are available are utilized. I want to talk a little bit about the funding. Like Dana said, our contract to implement Safe Routes to School County-wide is funded primarily by the One Bay Area grant. We're now, as she said, in the final year of a 9-year contract with SCTCA. As of June 2026, we've utilized a little over 82% of the funds available. We have about a little under 18% remaining. I just want to note that a big chunk is about 73,000 of the remaining funds is allocated to our sub-consultant for a project that's programmed for this year. So we're a little under because of that. W-Trans is our sub-consultant. Here is a snapshot of the total cost of the Safe Routes Countywide program during the 25-26 fiscal year. In other words, this is the amount of money that we bill to SCTCA and or build or receive from other contracts or grants to implement the program. As you can see, OBAG funds a large portion of the program, but we currently supplement our countywide activities with other funding sources. And those sources do vary widely from year to year and are not necessarily guaranteed. I also wanted to point out, we had been correctly concerned that the original amount of funding allocated through the last round of OBAG would not be enough to maintain the program at the level we've been operating at through 2027. And luckily, we were able to secure more than enough funding to make up for the shortfall from both a DHS secured public health grant in 24-25 and a California Department of Public Health Kids Play grants that commenced last year in 25-26. So those two funding sources allowed us to continue to offer the same level of service and also even expand a little bit past couple of years. And just one more slide on funding. Countywide costs, just to give a perspective, have increased every year with the exception of the 2 years impacted by COVID. This is in part due to rising costs and in part due to increased demand for services that we continue to meet. Our program has grown every single year. And again, the OBAG portion has varied from year to year. This past year, because of the grant we have, the CDPH grant, OBAG and also the public health funded 73% of our costs. But on average, it's been about 90% of our costs before the past couple of years. So now let's talk about programming. Many of you are aware our program consists of evaluation, encouragement, education, engagement, and support for engineering and enforcement. So I'm gonna not focus on this slide. I'll kind of go through other slides to elaborate on those topics. But I also want to share this slide, which illustrates all our program components in timeline mode. You can see we have a lot of overlapping initiatives. We're busy year-round, either prepping, coordinating, or implementing various aspects of the program. So I want to start by talking about evaluation because it's what we start the year with all our schools. We utilize evaluation to determine the potential for active transportation and the best approach to the ease at that particular site that they're working at. So we develop student address GIS maps for every one of our enrolled comprehensive sites each year to display where students live in relation to the school in the 1 quarter, 1/2, 1 mile, and 2 mile radius. We actually geocoded 84 schools last year. The support requests from both school district cities and our SCTCAs. 55 of those were enrolled schools and the other 29 were from other requests. So we do a lot of geocoding with support from Sonoma County GIS. It's really enlightening also when we compare the GIS map. We do this with every one of our enrolled schools each year to our fall student arrival departure tallies. This is where teachers or volunteers ask students how they arrive to and from school on 2 different days, typically in, again, September. This is Proctor Terrace Elementary. The map I showed before was also Proctor Terrace. So you could see from the map, about 20% of the students live in the 1/2 mile radius, but only about 12% are walking and bicycling to school. But then we also look and we can see that like many of the students in the 1/2 mile radius live on the other side of 4th Street, which is a very busy street that kids aren't like, a lot of parents don't want to have their kids cross on themselves, on their own. So, maybe that street could benefit from an improvement. So we look at the maps for those reasons as well. We share this data with school personnel, with parents, the local jurisdictions to help inspire action. So also in 25-26, we continued with our collaboration with the city of Santa Rosa and county to conduct 11 more Safe Routes to School walk audits. As I mentioned last year, between 2023 and 25, we audited a total of 27 sites in Petaluma and Santa Rosa. City staff in Petaluma and Santa Rosa have utilized the audits to identify barriers to the walking and rolling to school and to make improvements. So last year, just an example, as a result of one of our audits at R.L. Stevens Elementary School, city staff did, we identified a crosswalk that needed improvement. The city staff did a pop-up demo project of that crosswalk on Giffen. That's the top image. And then this past spring, they constructed a raised crosswalk at that location, which slows down traffic and is utilized by a lot of parents and students every day and has been really well received. So Santa Rosa and Petaluma have made dozens of improvements as a result of our walk audits, from daylighting red curbs to installation of RRFBs, newer refreshed crosswalks, newer refreshed signage, curb ramps, speed reduction, protected bike lanes, concrete asphalt repair, and more. So we are, again, seeking more opportunities to do this countywide, but we've focused on Santa Rosa and Petaluma to start with this particular round of funding. So next, I want to talk about schools enrolled in the program. So I talked about the fact that we have a comprehensive enrolled schools. These are the schools that were enrolled last year. Sorry, Richard Crane should not be blue. It's within Roanoke Park, but that's one of the Roanoke Park schools. All of these schools received bike and pedestrian safety education, implemented encouragement programming, and participated in evaluation. So those maps and the tallies. We meet with each of our enrolled schools 3 times a year. We develop a relationship with site leadership and with their team. Every year, we open enrollment to schools countywide. In addition to our comprehensively enrolled sites, we do provide services to non-enrolled schools as requested, which is including but not limited to walk audits, limited education, like coming in and doing a quick assembly, data collection, and participation in like a countywide encouragement event. So this year we served 19 additional sites besides our 55 enrolled sites. So when it comes to encouragement, our encouragement programming consists of suggested monthly themed walk and roll to school days and walk and roll to school challenge activities. And schools that we work with can tweak their implementation based on their capacity. 53 of our comprehensive enrolled sites participated in 5 or more encouragement initiatives this past year. Another 12 sites participated in between 1 and 4 encouragement initiatives this year. Our 3 most popular events are International Walk and Roll to School Day, which is coming up in October, same week as a week without driving. It took place on October 8th last year. Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, which was on November 14th. Bike to School Day, which I'll talk about in a second. In May, we had 61 schools and over 6,000 students participate just in International Walk and Roll to School Day last October, and 56 schools participated in Ruby Bridges Walk to School Day, not necessarily the same schools, so that more than 61 total. And then Bike to School Day was last May 6th, 2026, 56 schools participated in that event. Schools conducted before and after bike counts for that event, and the increases varied widely from school to school, with some increases as high as 500 to 700%. 1,422 kids bike to school for that event in terms of the reporting that we got from the enrolled schools, which was a 125% increase over the norm countywide. And here are some other pictures from other walk and roll events and challenges this year. And just pointing to some of those graphics, infographics, we create promotional materials and infographics in both English and Spanish to assist schools in effectively promoting our initiatives via their parent square, their emails, their social media, and more. These are just some examples of that. We do also encourage all of our enrolled schools that we communicate with regularly to establish walking school buses or bike trains or remote drop-off locations to inspire families to walk and roll to school together and also build community. We provide support to those schools to identify meetup locations and routes, to recruit parent or staff leaders, create flyers, provide bike train ride support, etc. A lot of schools have operated buses for years. Most operate on walk and roll to school day events, but the hope really is that, you know, parents and kids meet each other and choose to walk and roll together from those spots other times. So of course, we do not want to always just encourage kids to walk. We want to encourage walk and roll to do it safely as well. We visit classrooms to teach second and third graders pedestrian safety. We do fourth grade bike basics. We do fifth grade mapping and communications. And at middle or high school, we do drive your bike or safe routes to school infrastructure classes. And we schedule lessons with 61 sites in 25-26. The fourth grade bike rodeo is one of our most in-demand services. This is where we come on campus and teach all the fourth graders the basics of bicycling on bike during the school day. We also fit and distribute low-cost helmets. We conduct bike repairs. Last year, we provided this service to 39 schools countywide, actually 42 events because a couple of the schools were two-day events. Not only did we educate all the fourth graders, which was 2,359 students, but we taught over 300 fourth graders how to ride a bike for the first time. We distributed 558 new helmets, and we engaged over 400 parents and older students in supporting the bike rodeos as well, along with our staff. And at middle school and high school, we conduct bike and safe routes infrastructure education, as I said, in classrooms or school assemblies, as well as after school clubs and rides. We also held a community teen drive your bike commute classes last year in both Petaluma and Santa Rosa. And we reached 2,105 middle school students and 205 high school students last year, over 2,300 middle/high school students. We taught 62 middle school students how to ride a bike for the first time as well. Last year, we also continued to address an increasing need for e-bicycle education. In addition to our existing resources and e-bike resource page on our website, we held an e-bike education webinar for parents last April. And we also conducted e-bicycle versus e-moto counts at Sonoma County School, public, middle, and high schools to assess the problem and advocate for common sense e-device policies at local schools. Because our counts revealed that nearly 75% of e-devices on school, high school, and middle school campuses were illegal e-motos rather than legal e-bicycles. As a result, we've been developing more resources and outreach to address this issue, including this flyer on the left called our Great E-Bike Con, which details how manufacturers are peddling illegal e-motos as e-bikes and the associated risks of that. We have even more than this, which we created after this presentation was done. So we have a page on our website about e-bikes that you can get all that information from. We also continue to offer our Learn to Ride a Bike classes in partnership with Windsor, Petaluma, and Santa Rosa. Was that someone you know? Oh, wow.
Thank you. A release on that, baby?
When they sign up for the class, I think they do. Yeah. We taught 124 kids and supported 101 parents at our Learn to Ride classes this year. We had a 75% success rate there. We also continued with our family bike work. Oh, did you want a picture of that? Well, I can get it to you. We also continued with our family bike. Yeah, you definitely just email me if you want a picture. We also continued with our family bike workshops, our family rides, community bike skill courses where we teach families and kids how to ride together. We had 134 kids and adults participate in these initiatives here. We also did our Kids Bike Adventure Camp this past June in Santa Rosa. It was a really amazing week with really great breadth and depth to the students that were involved in that, 15 kids. And then we continue to subcontract and partner with local bike shops to provide free safety bike checks and repairs for hundreds of kids. This past year, we repaired 1,296 bikes at elementary schools and middle schools. And that's actually gone up. Last year it was 977. So like I said, we're increasing every year. And finally, oops, sorry. I didn't mean to do that, but let me just quickly get to that last slide. Sorry. And of course, we're out in the community as well. We do outreach at events, presentations at PTAs, school staff meetings, community meetings, facilitate task forces, and more. We reached over 1,823 people in those settings last year. And finally, the numbers in this slide reflect what's been taught this year at each of the following grade levels. And in the community, these numbers do not include participation in encouragement programming or the community outreach from the last slide. But we reached close to 10,000 students last year directly through initiatives on this slide. And our website is sonomasaferoutes.org. We also have an Instagram, Sonoma County Safe Routes, and a Facebook. Check it out to see all the current resources we have available. Educational handouts, videos, encouragement resources, task force meeting information, data for every site. You can find it all on our website. And you can also reach out to me anytime if you have a question or a comment or a concern. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate this presentation and seeing, I think each of our communities gets to see snippets of the work that you're doing countywide, but to see it comprehensively countywide in one report is helpful. So thank you for that. Director Leap, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I did. I'm really glad you included the thing about the e-bikes and motorbikes. That's great stuff that everybody is discussing. I just did just some quick math. 3 million in 8 years, 400K a year, 10,000 students. So are most of the people that are working with you volunteers?
I have a staff.
You have staff?
We have staff. Yeah, we have, I'm the director. I have 2 full-time program managers. One manages all the education side of things, all the equipment, all the bikes, logistics. Another one that teaches, kind of handles the middle school stuff, and then also does the site management that I do with the sites that are enrolled. And then we have educators. We have basically 2 part-time educators and 1 very part-time educator, and we have seasonal educators that are at our bike rodeos.
So maybe 10 paid staff
Yeah,
employees.
most not full-time, but 3 full-time.
And my other question was, what are you teaching? You have you have a number of different areas, but one is walking to school, and another is riding to school. You're teaching kids how to ride bikes. I assume you're teaching them how to cross safely.
Yep.
All the elements of getting to school safely on streets. Same thing in walking, how to pay attention and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then we did a new thing this year with the high schools. We started doing lessons in advance of our audits to educate us high school students or middle school if they had an audit at that school about safe routes to school infrastructure and like the kind of understanding the planning process and how it's meaningful to like engage in that, for improvements that will make it safer for everybody.
Thank you.
Director Okrepke.
Yeah, since I derailed the presentation with my parental pride, first of all, apologies to that. But I will give a shout out. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of kids not listening to their parents to learn new things or not, but it tends to happen. And I can just say that I'll advocate and give an endorsement for your program for teaching kids to ride bikes, because what I tried to do over the course of about a month took about an hour. And so it really was effective, and she really enjoyed it.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. That's so funny I have dozens of pictures of learn to ride classes, and I picked that one. It was a good one.
Director Giudice.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. So yeah, I'll preface my remarks with just one word: e-bikes, right? Causing a lot of consternation in my neck of the woods, as it were. And that leads to my questions. Remind me how the schools get selected?
They enroll. We do reach out to all of our schools. We send e-newsletters. We try to add, every principal to our e-newsletter so that they receive that notification.
I see.
But they do have to actively indicate that they're willing to partner, because being enrolled requires a relationship, because we're asking them to collect data. We're asking them to implement encouragement. We want to get numbers from them when they're doing encouragement.
So it comes at the principal level, not at the district level.
At the principal level for the enrollment, although the district can be very supportive in getting principals to enroll. So we do try to, have a relationship with the district. Yeah.
And then you make that final determination.
All schools I mean,
You don't turn anyone away.
I don't turn anyone away, but we do obviously have limits in terms of how many bike rodeos we can do. And if demand exceeded a capacity, then we would be making decisions based on demographics,
Right.
enrollment,
Yeah, 'cause-
geographic
Yeah, 'cause I
area.
note that the 3 schools in Rohnert Park, great schools, worthy schools.
Yeah.
Glad they're participating, but they're all embedded in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So they're all, they're not collectors, they're just surface roads,
Yeah.
right? A lot
Right.
easier to traverse than a collector. The
Right.
major problem that we're having in town is along Snyder, where I have well over 1,000 kids going to school at Lawrence Jones.
Yep.
And literally 2 blocks down the road, over 2,000 going to school at Rancho. And so I'm curious, that community education outreach program, is that a very expensive program, or what does it cost if you go into a high school or go into a middle school and you try to teach those?
Well, it
kids
depends
and-
what we're doing. So, I mean, when we're doing like the on bike, that's pretty expensive because we have multiple staff and we've got to rent a truck and equipment and all that. If we're just coming in and doing an assembly at a school and like talking about, it's an hour or two of one staff person's time. So it just really and that's what we look at, as we're working with our schools, we're like, if someone enrolls late or, we'll figure out how to serve them, even if we can't do like the most expensive service. And I definitely hear you about like Lawrence Jones and Rancho. That is the hard, like middle schools and high schools, getting them to enroll has been like the hardest thing. Like we have way more elementary schools.
Right.
But we're trying to make it easier for them. Like, and again, I don't want to talk too long, but like we have a whole online for middle school bike education week during COVID. We created a 10 and now it's actually 12 module driver bike video course. And we have been partnering with middle school PE programs to
So
have
maybe
the
you and I can
teachers.
talk offline.
Yeah,
And I can assist you in some way. And
I would love that.
advancing those
Yeah.
schools.
Yeah.
Really important. And then finally, probably this last question is for James. I've heard rumors that there's a lot of talk up in Sacramento about coming up with e-bike legislation. And I know it's kind of moving through, I don't know who's doing it or who's sponsoring the bills or whatever. Is there an opportunity there for us to advocate for direct funding to come back through Safe Routes to School for that particular purpose for education?
So direct safe routes to school program, there's not a program per se that's just for that in particular, but there is, as you may have seen on our agenda earlier on the consent calendar, there's OBAG set aside funds, right? So that is our primary fund source that this board has been unwavering cycle after cycle of OBAG dedicating these funds to this purpose. And then, of course, we have our several fund sources that are potentially eligible. They're just not branded as safe routes to school in particular, right? It'd be our active transportation plan. Other parts of OBAG will also be monitoring our MTC regional programs that are other federal fund sources that could potentially come to support these types of efforts.
And we do seek, as you saw from that one slide, we do try to seek other sources of funding. It's difficult because we don't have a development person dedicated to that. And I'm full-time working on directing the program. But when I see a grant opportunity come across my desk that is applicable and like where I feel like it's likely we could, get it, I will put my time into it. And that's why we got that CDPH grant this past year.
Good work. Okay. Oh, Director Hopkins.
I just wanted to express my gratitude and also to follow up in addition to sort of, outreaching to principals. A lot of this can come from parent volunteerism. Like my husband volunteers to do, all the walk and rolls and hand out, you take the information about like, where did you, how did you arrive? Did you arrive, by bike, walking, giving out little prizes that you guys provide. And it's a wonderful, wonderful program. And so if you can't get it through the administration, sometimes you can get it through like parents then advocating, through the administration.
For sure. We've had parents. And again, the administration does have to agree to do it because it requires school committee. But for sure, we've had schools come through that because a parent wanted it and then went to the administration and said, I want to volunteer. I want to do this program. so that can happen.
And basically often when the administration sort of says no, it's because of lack of capacity. So if you have a parent who's willing to like shoulder that and all they have to do is like formally sign up and then give them the stuff and the parent kind of runs it, then it becomes a lot easier to access to. One other thing that I just wanted to flag is that I know that the concept of permanent daylight savings time is currently being deliberated at the federal level. And the sun would not rise until like 8:30 in Sonoma County in the winter. So if we are talking about safe routes to school, there is no safe route to school when it is pitch black for anyone other than someone in a vehicle. So just wanted to kind of flag that. That would be a really distressing change for students.
Safe routes program nationally are not in favor of that.
Yeah. So just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Vice Chair Corsi.
Thanks, Tina. I appreciate everything that you and your team do. I'm sitting here thinking if only there were a program to teach adults how to safely get to work or to the store or to the gym, might not need safe routes to school. But that's not going to happen in my lifetime. All of the work that you do is great. And, you know, what frustrates me is that, you know, you see lines of kids and parents walking and rolling to school on walk and roll to school day.
Yeah.
And then you see the counts at Proctor Terrace, which is my neighborhood school.
Yeah.
And we live in a neighborhood that's really bikeable.
Yeah.
And the numbers are just really, really low. It frustrates me. You mentioned 4th Street being a barrier. It used to be that Doyle Park School was where kids on the south side of 4th Street went to school.
Yeah.
Then they turned it into a French charter school, and now it's a closed school. So, you know, just talking about the ripple of consequences that go with closing a school or making it more exclusive than just the folks in the neighborhood. I guess I don't have any questions or anything other to add other than keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Those are the things that keep me up at night too. Like, why isn't, you know, and I wish we could even use our data, like our data is really used as a snapshot within a single year. It can't be used to track year to year success because of the variables within each school. It just can't. And I could go talk for 10 minutes about why it can't. But you know, there must be a way to invest in like seeing what that mode shift is. Like, but you also have to look at population changes and school populations have changed so significantly and just even where kids are coming from one year to the next, like in Santa Rosa alone, because of the school closures. We don't have the same group of kids. They're not coming from the same places. It's just really hard.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to public comment on this item. We'll start with folks in the room. If anyone would like to make public comment, please approach the podium. Looks like we have someone. Would you mind taking a quick step back from the podium? We share the podium. Oh, great. Thank you. Go ahead.
Roberta Delgado is my name. I'm a Sonoma County biker chick. And am I?
Yeah, you're good. Continue.
I just want to thank you for your support of this, of safe routes to schools. They are creating a group of people who are more likely in the future to choose the joy of pedaling under the sky as opposed to getting inside a motor vehicle. I mean, I love my fellow human beings until I'm in my car. And among, in my mind, I'm drawing the connection to the climate resiliency efforts and reducing the number of parents who are driving, 1 or 2 miles to drop their kids off at a school and be in a long line of cars, engines running until they can drop their kids off. So again, thank you.
Thanks, Roberta. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate it. Is there anyone on Zoom? Looks like we have one hand raised.
Yeah.
We have Kyle Balbo.
Go ahead, Kyle.
All right. And I'm so appreciative that SCTCA started talking about interdistrict transfers So really, I want to encourage this body to think about safe routes as more than just the walk or bike trips immediately around a school campus. For many students, access to school now depends on a much larger regional transportation network. Interdistrict transfers are becoming increasingly important for helping high schools stabilize enrollment and provide families with educational options. Transportation can either make those opportunities real or effectively make them one way. Right now, students living in Sebastopol can use transit to access schools in the Gotati-Rohnert Park area, but the reverse is much more difficult. There is currently no practical morning bus connection from Gotati or Rohnert Park into Sebastopol. That means Sebastopol schools are limited in the number of interdistrict transfer students they can realistically serve, particularly students who do not have a parent available to drive them every morning. If we are serious about equitable access to education, transportation should not determine whether an interdistrict transfer is practical. I encourage SCTCA to consider school access as part of its broader transit integration and safe routes work, including whether morning service between Gotati-Rohnert Park and Sebastopol could support students traveling in both directions. Safe routes to school should ultimately mean that students can safely and reliably reach the schools that serves them, not only if they happen to live on the right side of the transit network.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom with a hand raised?
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring it back. So this is just to receive the report. Any additional comments or feedback before we deem that complete? Thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate the work that you guys are doing, educating parents and others about e-motos and e-bikes, and looking forward to that continued conversation as that entire genre of mode continues to be problematic in a lot of our communities.
We love doing it. For those of you on social media, Sonoma County Safe Routes, we are going to be doing an e-bike, e-moto education campaign on our Instagram and Facebook in the next month. We're working on the campaign slides.
Great. And maybe staff can share that out with us once it's live. That'd be wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, and on to item 5.5. So this is our revised Go Sonoma maintenance of effort compliance with PUC section 18200 for our Go Sonoma policy 4.14. And David's going to tell us what that means.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, directors. Dave River, Director of Projects and Program at SCTCA. So just to give you a briefing on what maintenance of effort is, since those of you on the board may have forgotten what this is, and we have some newcomers as well. So maintenance of effort is used to ensure that transportation-specific fund sources are not supplanted for your discretionary baseline expenditures. So that means if you're committing funds to repair roads or do other kind of transportation improvements, and we pass a new transportation sales tax or new funding source for transportation, you're not pulling those fund sources back and using them for general fund purposes. There are three major categories of road maintenance funding for Sonoma County. There's the highway user tax account, the traditional gas tax. That gas tax was increased by Senate Bill 1 through the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Program, through the Local Streets and Roads Program back in 2017. And then we have our Go Sonoma sales tax through the Go Sonoma Roads Program. Just to give you some background, the HUDA, or the highway user tax account, gas tax funding was decreasing back in the mid-2000s as cars are getting more fuel efficient. We had more electric cars on the road. In 2017, once we kind of reached a kind of a crisis point, road maintenance funding was increased with the passage of SB1 through the Road Repair and Accountability Act. SB1 established the Road Maintenance and Rehabilitation Account and the Local Streets and Roads Funding Program. According to state law, if you receive those SB1 funds, you have to sustain a maintenance effort based on what you spent on through your general fund through fiscal year 2009-10, 2010-11, and 2011-12 fiscal years for street, road, and highway purposes. Monitoring and enforcement of that MOE requirement is done by the State Controller's Office. For eligible project types for SB1 funds, they can be used for road maintenance and rehabilitation, safety projects, railroad grade separations, where you build a bridge over or under the railroad tracks, complete street improvements, including active transportation, bicycle pedestrian projects, transit facilities, and drainage and stormwater projects, and traffic control devices. if somehow you have the happy distinction of having a pavement condition index over 80, then you can spend your transportation funds on other purposes as well, such as roadway widening. But we do not have any jurisdictions in Sonoma County that are that high. Just to kind of give you a background on how much funds come in from both HUDA and RMRA funds. You can see here, it's about 26 million annually from the highway users tax account and about 25 million annually through the RMRA. So about $52 million projected annually this fiscal year. So there is, as I mentioned, a strict MOE requirement, and that cannot be waived other than changes to state law. Even if you have an economic hardship or anything else come up, you still have to meet your requirements under state law. Sonoma, on the other hand, only generates about $11 million annually for local street and road repair. Previously, under Measure M, we had only about 19% of the measure going to local street maintenance. Now it's 38% of the measure, and that is now the Sonoma Roads funds. The Public Utilities Code includes legislation that grants us the authority to pass a transportation sales tax, and the Public Utilities Code and our Sonoma Expenditure Plan both require us to have maintenance of effort policy. Sonoma Roads has a number of eligible project types, similar to what the eligible project types are for the gas tax and SB1. I've highlighted in yellow there the exact language from the expenditure plan, which includes fix existing roads and keep them well maintained. All projects will take into consideration bicycle and pedestrian needs, traffic calming, intelligent transportation system technology, construction methods and materials that reduce emissions, and appropriate safety measures. So all those elements are eligible for sales tax revenue. So essentially pretty much any kind of transportation project that you would want to do in your city or the county. Back in 2020, we did a revised MOE policy to align it with the state requirements for Senate Bill 1. Based on a lot of board and advisory committee involvement, there were some differences done at the time. And while the two requirements are aligned with SB1, we still have a separate policy. We have exemptions for several different reasons, rolling averages and proportionate penalties that are different than what the state requires. But this is really the key accountability requirement for Sonoma that we made to the voters to ensure that funds committed to transportation purposes are not being reduced or redirected to other needs. If we were to relax or waive the MOE requirements, that could jeopardize future attempts to reauthorize Sonoma before the sales tax expires in 2045. Here's a little comparison of the requirements for SB1 versus Sonoma Roads. For both of them, reporting is due in the case for the state in December, and for us in February. Both of them, you report what discretionary expenditures were done for one-time needs from your general fund, and the final reporting for SB1 funds are due at the state controller's office in December, and they're posted in May. We like to align our reporting with what the state reports, and so we ask that when your local agencies provide their reporting to us, they're matching what the state provides, and then we summarize those reports, and those go out to the committees in April, and then the board takes action in May. This was delayed in 2026 due to some reasons that I'll be getting into. For adjustments for the maintenance of effort, there's really three ways to adjust it. One is if you have a major one-time capital project that you saved up a number of years worth of funding, and so that we're able to reduce that as a discretionary expenditure. The second one is if you have a funding source that is no longer available, and so that is not required to be maintained in the future. Or if you also have a funding source that has less than 95% of the revenue that you previously got, that reduction is available to have an adjustment as well. No other adjustments or waivers are allowed under the board's approved maintenance of effort policy. Just to give you some timelines of the prior actions that have occurred this year. Back in March, we determined that all jurisdictions were complying with the MOE requirements with the exception of the city of Sebastopol. At the time, the TAC discussed and the members did not want to take an action to penalize the city of Sebastopol. The resulting penalty to the city of Sebastopol would reduce their amount of Sonoma Roads funds by 8%, which would distribute about $11,000 to other jurisdictions for this current fiscal year. In April, we took the same recommendation to the Citizens Advisory Committee, and the unanimously approved staff's recommendation that the city of Sebastopol was not in compliance with the policy and that we were required to withhold and redistribute the 8% of the funds the city of Sebastopol was deficient. In May, we intended to bring you the same item. However, we pulled the item from the agenda as the city of Sebastopol was in the process of making some adjustments to the reporting. Since that time, the city has made adjustments to the reporting of the state controller's office, and we took this item to the July TAC and CAC meetings, and they both unanimously approved to approve staff recommendations that all jurisdictions are now compliant with the MOE requirements. So now the staff recommendation is that the city of Sebastopol originally reported their expenditures below the 3-year baseline, but they have subsequently audited their financial statements and have revised the reporting. We recommend that you find that all 10 jurisdictions are in compliance with the Public Utilities Code, section 180200, the Traffic Relief Act of Sonoma County, and Measure M Go Sonoma Policy 4.14. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Colleagues, any questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and go to public comment. Members of the public can approach the podium we'll start with in person and then we'll head over to Zoom. Seeing nobody approaching the podium, we'll head back to Zoom. Do we have any hands raised on Zoom for this item?
There are no hands raised.
I was wondering how we were gonna tie these two together, but alas, no. So we have proposed action. So this is for item 5.5, and there's no comments. I'd be happy to entertain a motion.
Sure. I'm happy to make a motion that SCTCA board find that all 10 jurisdictions are in compliance with Public Utilities Code section 180200, the Traffic Relief Act of Sonoma County, and Measure M and Go Sonoma Policy 4.14.
Motion by Director Giudice and a second by Director Harvey. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Thank you, David. Okay, so with that, we are on to our reports and announcements. And do we want to just go straight into you want to start with 6.1, James, or you want to go to 6.4?
Yeah, we have time to cover them briefly. So 6.1 executive committee met prior to this meeting, and we discussed the current agenda as well as we went over the SCTCA funding program cycle 2 update that the board has received that will be an action item at our September meeting, making recommendations for funding. We also discussed some of the next steps with regard to the climate resiliency item that Tanya presented today that will be coming out to the board, including some potential funding opportunities from the county. Lastly, we closed with discussing the upcoming bike share to be able to extend a bike share in Sonoma County. Staff is working on a proposal for this board in September. That concludes my report out on the exec committee.
Okay, any questions or comments on that? And we'll take public comment at the end of reports and announcements. Does that work? Do it collectively? Okay. So now we're on to item 6.2 for regional agency reports.
Sure, sorry. I'll report on the Golden Gate Bridge. Obviously, all of the efforts right now are around the seismic retrofit, and plans have been formalized, and we are beginning the work in earnest. So that's the biggest update. You got the report on mascots. Some of that 22% or most of that 22% increase that you saw, these are straight shots going from San Rafael into San Francisco, or their intercity routes as well. So just wanted to clarify that. Overall, I think we're down 4 or 5%, although we showed a 22% increase. That's because of what's going on in Marin County. So the mascots is being very successful.
Great. Thank you. Any other regional agency updates? Okay, and now we have advisory committees. So those are all in our packet and linked. Do we need to call out any of those items? None? Okay, so we'll invite David Ruperta back up and we will get our SCTA, RCPA activities reports.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So a little bit more of a fun presentation, less dry. So just give the overview of all of our activity reports that are summarized in your board packet. We have a number of items discussed this afternoon with you. On the planning side, we have updates on the week without driving that's coming up in October, update on our disadvantaged community map that we're working on. For projects, update on our resilient Highway 37 program and the 101 Crown Road overcrossing in Petaluma. Program side, some updates on our equitable EV charging plan and Bay Run outreach and marketing. And then on communications and engagement, we have the update on the climate mobilization strategy, our funding program survey, Safe Route School Ride we did in the community of Roseland last week. And then on the funding side, the SCTCA funding program cycle 2 and grant planning coordination. So as we brought back to last year, the week without driving is coming up again this year as well. That'll be from between October 1st and the 8th. And it's an opportunity for elected officials and other local leaders to experience a week without driving and see how that is an experience for people that cannot drive or choose not to drive. It's an educational opportunity for decision makers and local leaders, or find out what the 30% of the community that doesn't drive deals with every day. So we will be bringing you a resolution next month for your consideration, but you can learn more at weekWithoutDriving.org. We have a disadvantaged communities map on our website that's available for the public and our local agency staff to use. This has a number of indicators from the Census Bureau and state agencies that look at socioeconomic disadvantage and equity criteria, environmental justice and health, tribal lands, climate and hazard exposure, and planning boundaries and locations. So it's a very useful tool for grant applications and other planning needs. For our equitable EV charge plan, we reviewed and provided feedback on the county's draft final plan. I presented that plan to the local government EV partnership on July 20th, and we'll be sharing that with our SCTCA committees this month and next month, and coming to the board in September. We're working with local agency staff to develop recommendations and helping move towards implementation in the future. For Bay Run Marketing Outreach, the Total Decarbonization Services Program Public Sector Financing Services for local government finance capital room staff. We had some classes in July and August. For July 11th, we had a residential energy efficiency workshop in partnership with the cities of Cotati and Rock Park. And this fall, we'll be doing small businesses campaign. For the climate mobilization strategy, we continue public engagement and community outreach through a number of community-based organizations, including a well-attended La Familia Sana focus group in Cloverdale on July 29th. We have additional focus groups planned for late August and early September to gather community input across the county. Last Thursday, we hosted a community ride in the neighborhood of Roseland and part of Santa Rosa. This is part of our county-wide Safe Routes to School plan, where we're looking at infrastructure improvements around schools throughout the county. We partnered with City Santa Rosa, the Bike Coalition, and Safe Routes to School program, and none of our other partners to do a community ride focused on the Roseland neighborhood to identify Safe Routes to School from Highway 101 all the way to Stony Point Road. This will help inform infrastructure improvements, and we had a really great turnout from the community on that. We continue to get engagement on our SCTA funding program cycle 2. I believe we have over 150 responses now in our survey, and we continue to seek survey responses on our funding recommendations. We are partnering with a number of local community-based organizations to get their input as well. And then we're also trying to seek their input on climate priorities as well for the climate mobilization strategy. Survey is open till the 1st, and we encourage people to share it far and wide. For the funding program recommendations, we released the draft recommendations out back at the beginning of July. We have $118 million in funding recommended for projects across the county, and we are working through bringing those draft recommendations for consideration by our committees and the board later on in September. On the grant coordination side, we have established a grant tracking database to monitor new opportunities and developed a notification system for SCTCA members and committees. We are serving past grant awards and our support to identify funding gaps and doing whatever we can to partner with local agencies and the region to secure more funding for our local projects. For the Resilient Highway 37 program, there's been a number of developments over the last month. MTC and Caltrans have released a funding agreement for the first construction package of the Sears Point to Maryland Improvement Project, which will replace the Tully Creek Bridge just east of Highway 121 with a new 400-foot long bridge. The funds for that project will be allocated at the CTC's meeting next week. And they also are allocating funds for the replacement of the Wild Creek Bridge just east of Highway 101 in Marin County. So bidding on both of those projects will occur in September. And so there's going to be a lot of work on the street for Highway 37. In addition to that, Caltrans has already awarded the construction contract to rehab the Petaluma River Bridge on Highway 37, and they'll be starting construction very soon. For longer term projects, the Highway 37 121 consultant contract is being negotiated right now, along with our cooperative agreement with Caltrans. We'll be bringing that to you in September with an overall program update. We also had a tour of the Corner Road overcrossing last week with Chair Kelly and Director Cater Thompson, along with Mayor McDonald and a number of other partners from Petaluma, Caltrans, Smart, and the federal and state representatives. This was looking at ways to improve safe walking and biking from the Petaluma North Smart Station all the way over across 101 to Industrial Avenue. We're currently working with Caltrans and the structural design of that project and trying to secure additional funding to construct in the future.
Not working.
Can advance the slide.
Yep. Don't get froze up on you.
Nope. With that, just to note that for those that wanted hard copies of the final comprehensive transportation plan, Ross has a number of printed copies if you did want one, and we appreciate the partnership with all of our members. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. You guys have been busy. Okay, so let's go to public comment on the reports. Actually, we have not done board member announcements, so let's, if we have any questions for David while we have him standing nearby, Director Leap.
Thank you, David, for your presentation. Can you tell me what is an equitable EV charging plan?
So we have been partnering with the county and our other partners to look at gaps in the network of charging stations throughout the county to see where there are locations that people need to have additional charging stations put in. We've identified a number of priority locations for those chargers, and then we're going to be looking at future implementation in partnership with the county and other partners. So it's really looking at where do we need charging stations now and in the future to help people be incentivized to switch to electric vehicles in the future.
So the idea is to have equitable access physically by locations and customer types, I might say, that there's no inequities because of location.
Correct.
Thank you.
Director Lowe.
Is there any update on, and perhaps it's just a bird walk and just tell me to talk to you later, on 8th Street East and 121?
We are actively working with Caltrans and our consultant team on preparing the draft environmental document and the project report for the roundabout project. We're going through a number of issues, but we hope to have that circulated to the public later this late fall or early winter.
Is it absolute that it's going to be a roundabout, not a signal?
Yes.
And how is that determined?
The project development team made that determination a couple of months ago. The team has developed a number of partners from Caltrans, SCTCA, the county, and SMART, and we made the determination that based on the environmental and right-of-way impacts of the traffic signal alternative, which had a much bigger footprint, it was better to move forward with just the roundabout alternative.
Okay, because the signal would have more lanes that would need to be added. Was that the issue?
Correct, and it would also require replacing the bridge over Shell Creek that was just
over Shell Creek. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and go to public comment on our reports. If there's anyone in the audience in person with us today, please approach the podium. Seeing none, we'll head over to Zoom. Do we have any hand raised on the reports item?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public comment, and I don't believe we have the opportunity for board members' announcements at this time. Director Okrepke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to give a quick shout out to John and Kiriakis at MMO Partners, who are not only the SCTCA federal lobbyist, but they're the City of Santa Rosa's federal lobbyist, because due to them and some heavy staff efforts, I'm going to make you do math real quick. Last week on August 5th, 2026, we received notice we were going to get the funding for a $10 million low-no bus grant that we were awarded to in fiscal year 23 from the federal government. Unfortunately, the no part was a no, so it's going to be low emissions, but it's going to allow us to buy anywhere from 9 to 10 new buses for city bus. So thank you to MMO and to everybody who worked on that effort.
Wonderful. Okay, seeing no other announcements, we will go ahead and adjourn, and we will see you all in September. Thank you.
Thank you.